Let's see how quickly we can cover everything you need to know for GCSE Biology Paper 1 for WJEC. This is good for higher and foundation tier, double combined and triple separate science. I'll tell you when some of the bigger concepts are for triple, but not what's for higher and foundation, as there's not a lot of difference honestly. And don't forget to check out the Science Shorts app to help you test your knowledge. Let's go. We put cells into two main groups. Eukaryotic cells have a nucleus in which their DNA is found. That's your plant and animal cells, for example. Prokaryotic cells don't have a nucleus. The cell membrane keeps everything inside the cell, but they're also semi or partially or selectively permeable, which means they allow certain substances to pass through. Plant cells have an extra cell wall made of cellulose, providing a rigid structure for them. Bacteria also have a cell wall, but it's not made of cellulose. Cytoplasm is the liquid that makes up the cell in which most chemical reactions take place. Mitochondria is the site of respiration. That's where energy is released for the cell to function. Ribosomes are the site of protein synthesis. That's where proteins are assembled. That's where amino acids are assembled into proteins. Plant cells also contain chloroplasts. That's the site of photosynthesis. They contain chlorophyll. Plant cells also have a permanent vacuole in which sap is stored. Cells specialize or differentiate depending on the function they need to fulfill. For example, nerve, muscle, root hair, xylem, and phloem cells. Stem cells are those that haven't yet specialized. They're found in human and animal embryos and the meristems of plants. That's the top of the shoot. Stem cells are also made in your bone marrow throughout your life as well, but these ones only specialize into blood cells. We can use stem cells to combat conditions like diabetes and paralysis. In fact, right out of the movie The Island, people are now getting clones of themselves made, then harvesting the stem cells, as these won't be rejected by the person. Personally, I think this is a dystopian man-made horror beyond comprehension. You have to weigh up the ethical arguments for yourself. Cloning plants can be used to prevent species from becoming extinct or produce crops with specific characteristics. It's when cells get organized together that things get interesting though. When similar cells are connected, we call this a tissue, say heart tissue for example. Tissues form organs, for example your heart, and organs work together in an organ system like your circulatory system. Diffusion is the movement of molecules or particles from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. We say they move down the concentration gradient, like a ball just rolling down a hill. It'll do it by itself. That doesn't require any energy input, so we say it's passive. This will happen across a semi or partially or selectively permeable membrane if the holes in the membrane are large enough for the molecules to move through. For example, for most cells, water molecules can pass through, but glucose molecules will not, at least not by diffusion anyway. Osmosis is the name specifically given to the movement, we could say diffusion, but we say movement of water across such a membrane. For example, if there's a higher concentration of glucose outside a cell, the glucose can't diffuse in to balance the concentration. So instead, the water moves out of the cell, resulting in a decrease in its mass. The rate of diffusion and osmosis can be increased by increasing the difference in concentrations, increasing the temperature, or increasing the surface area of the membrane across which this happens. This is why the villi cells in your small intestine are lumpy, as well as alveoli, the air sacs in your lungs, and root hair cells, for example, too. They all have a very high surface area to volume ratio. The practical for osmosis goes as follows. Cut equal sized cylinders from a potato or another vegetable, weigh them and place them in test tubes with varying concentrations of sugar solution. After a day or so, we remove them, dab the excess water off their surface, and re-weigh. We calculate percentage change in mass. If it's lighter than it was before, this is a negative change in mass. We plot these percentages against sugar concentration and we draw a line of best fit. Where this crosses the x-axis is the concentration at which no change in mass should have occurred, so no osmosis. So this means this must be the same as the concentration inside the potato itself. Glucose and other nutrients and minerals can move through a membrane by active transport, whereby carrier proteins in the membrane use energy to move substances through the membrane. As there's energy used in this case, this can actually move them against the concentration gradient. For example, moving mineral ions into plant root hair cells. Enzymes are biological catalysts, some of which break down larger molecules into smaller ones that can then be absorbed by the villi in your small intestine into the bloodstream to be transported to every part of your body. For example, amylase is the enzyme that breaks down starch into glucose. Well, maltose first, but eventually glucose. Enzymes are specific, that is, they only break down certain molecules. For example, carbohydrases break down carbohydrates into simple sugars. Amylase is one of these. Proteases break down proteins into amino acids, and lipases break down lipids, that's fats, into glycerol and fatty acids. They're specific because they work on a lock-and key principle. The substrate, for example the starch, binds to the enzyme's active site. We then call this a complex. However, this can only happen if the substrate is the right shape in order to fit the active site. In reality, they're incredibly complex shapes, no pun intended. These shapes here are just there to represent them. Much like a lock and key though, it only works if they're the right shape for each other. The rate of enzyme activity increases with temperature due to the molecules having more energy. That is, until the active site changes shape, and so the substrate no longer binds to it. We say the enzyme has denatured. This maximum rate occurs at the optimum temperature, optimum meaning best. This is similar for pH as well, except it can denature at too high or too low pH. The practical on this involves mixing amylase with starch at different temperatures or with different pH buffer solutions. Once mixed, we start a timer, then every 10 seconds we remove a couple of drops and put them into a spot in a tile dimple with iodine solution in. To begin with, the iodine solution will turn black due to there being starch present, but eventually it will stay orange, showing that all of the starch has been broken down. Calculate the time taken to do that, and then we plot these times against pH or temperature. Draw a curved line of best fit, and the lowest point is where the starch would have taken the shortest time to be broken down. That's the optimum temperature or pH. However, in true biology fashion, we're technically not allowed to interpolate between points for some reason, so we must only say that the optimum pH or temperature is between the two lowest points. Shrug. Every cell, bar red blood cells, has mitochondria, the site of respiration. Respiration takes place in every organism to provide energy for other chemical reactions to take place and also for movement and warmth. Aerobic respiration means with oxygen. Here's the word and balanced chemical equations. As you can hopefully see, it's the opposite of photosynthesis. During exercise, your breathing rate and heart rate rise to increase the rate at which oxygen is delivered to your cells for respiration. Anaerobic respiration occurs when there's a lack of oxygen. Glucose is instead converted straight into lactic acid, which releases some energy but less than aerobic respiration does. This is what you feel when your muscles ache during intense exercise. This poison can't stay in your body, so there is an oxygen debt built up. That means more oxygen is needed afterward to break down this lactic acid in the liver, where it's turned back into glucose. That's why your breathing rate and heart rate take some time to return to normal after exercise. Plant and yeast cells can respire anaerobically, but slightly differently. Instead, glucose is turned into ethanol and carbon dioxide. That's why yeast is used when baking. The CO2 bubbles made cause the bread or cake to rise. This is also called fermentation. It's also used to make alcoholic drinks as ethanol is produced. Metabolism is defined as the sum of all reactions in a cell or organism. These can include respiration, conversion of glucose into starch, glycogen and cellulose, fatty acids and glycerol are built up into lipids, and also the breakdown of excess proteins. Breathing isn't respiration, but it does provide the necessary oxygen for respiration to happen in our cells. Air moves down the trachea into the bronchi, then the bronchioles, and it ends up in the alveoli, the air sacs, where it diffuses into the blood vessels around it. Alveoli are lumpy, so they have a large surface area, so this diffusion happens at a fast rate. The oxygen then binds to the hemoglobin in your red blood cells. They then transport it to every cell in your body to be used for respiration. Carbon dioxide made from respiration is dissolved into the plasma of the blood, where it diffuses into the lungs and is exhaled. Some water is also excreted this way too, as you know, when you breathe on a cold mirror, for example. Your digestive system breaks down food you eat into useful nutrients for your body to use. Acid in your stomach breaks it down. Bile and enzymes work together in your small intestine to break it down further. Bile is made in the liver and stored in the gallbladder before being used. What it does is neutralize the acid from the stomach, and it also emulsifies fats to form droplets that increase the surface area of these exposed to the enzymes so they're broken down faster. Food tests allow us to identify what nutrients are in our grub. Iodine solution turns from orange to black in the presence of starch. Benedict solution turns from blue to green to orange to brick red in the presence of sugars. We say it's semi-quantitative. Birouette's reagent turns from blue to purple with proteins. And cold ethanol will go cloudy with lipids, that is, fats. You need to eat a balanced diet in order to get all of the nutrients needed to keep you healthy. Carbohydrates provide energy. Starch, for example, is found in bread, cereal, pasta, and potatoes. Fats and oils, or lipids, are also a source of energy, found in butter and nuts, for example. Proteins are needed for growth and repair, found in meat, eggs, and nuts. Vitamins are needed to keep you healthy and are found in fruit and vegetables. Too little vitamin C and you develop scurvy, which destroys your gums and hair. Too little vitamin D can be detrimental to your bones and muscles. You can develop rickets, causing your legs to bow. It's similar for minerals too. For example, calcium is needed for healthy bones. Otherwise, you can develop osteoporosis, while iron is needed for red blood cells. Otherwise, you can become anemic. Fiber, also called roughage sometimes, is found in bread, cereal, fruit, and vegetables. This keeps your digestive system working properly. Water, of course, is also needed by every cell in your body. The heart is at the center of the circulatory system, the transport system of your body. We call it a double circulatory system because blood enters the heart twice every time it's pumped around the body. Deoxygenated blood from the body enters in the right side of your heart. By the way, you always look at the heart or any diagram as if it's yours, and it enters through the vena cava, the main vein, into the right atrium of the heart. The valve between the right atrium and the right ventricle stops backflow, just like all valves, to stop deoxygenated blood from going back into the body. The heart muscles contract and the blood goes through the pulmonary artery to the lungs to be oxygenated. It then comes back to the heart through the pulmonary vein into the left atrium. It then goes into the left ventricle, then out to the body through the aorta. The left side of the heart has thicker walls, as the left ventricle has to pump blood to the whole body, whereas the right ventricle only has to pump it to the lungs. A group of cells in the wall of the right atrium create electrical pulses that cause the heart muscles to contract and the heart to beat. If these aren't working properly, you can be given an artificial pacemaker to do the same job. Blood vessels that go away from the heart are always arteries, veins towards. That means that arteries carry oxygenated blood apart from the pulmonary artery and vice versa for veins. Arteries have thicker walls to withstand the higher pressure, and so that means they have a thinner lumen, the hole in the middle that the blood travels through. Veins have thinner walls due to the lower blood pressure, but have valves to stop backflow. Arteries split and get smaller and smaller until they end up as tiny capillaries with one cell thick walls to allow the fast diffusion of molecules in and out of cells. The heart is a muscle, so it needs its own supply of oxygen and, therefore, blood to keep the muscle pumping. This is delivered by the coronary artery. If this is blocked by the buildup of fatty deposits, a heart attack can occur. This is CHD, coronary heart disease. Stents are little tubes inserted into blood vessels to keep them open, so blood can flow in this case. Statins are drugs that reduce cholesterol, which in turn reduces the fatty deposits. Faulty heart valves result in backflow occurring. These can be replaced with artificial ones. Along with plasma and red blood cells, blood also carries white blood cells, which combat infection, and platelets, which clump together to clot wounds and stop bleeding. CVD, cardiovascular disease, is an example of a non-communicable disease, as the cause comes from inside your body. Other examples of such diseases include conditions like allergic reactions and cancer. A communicable disease must be caused by a pathogen that enters your body that will cause a viral, bacterial, or fungal infection. Back to non-communicable diseases though, obesity and too much sugar can cause type 2 diabetes. A bad diet, smoking, and lack of exercise can affect the risk of heart disease. Alcohol can cause liver diseases, smoking, lung disease, or lung cancer. Cancer is the result of damaged cells dividing uncontrollably, leading to tumours. A carcinogen is the term given to anything that increases the risk of cancer, for example, the tar in cigarettes. Benign tumours don't spread through the body, and they're relatively easy to treat. However, malignant tumours are when these cancerous cells spread through the body, much worse. BMI stands for Body Mass Index. It's an indication of how healthy a person's weight is relative to their height. Whatever number you end up with will put you into bands that determine if you're underweight, a healthy weight, overweight, or obese. Plants also have organs. Leaves are where photosynthesis takes place, producing food for the plant. Water also leaves the plant through them, allowing transpiration to take place, the diffusion of water into roots and up the xylem. We say it's unidirectional as it only goes in one direction. The rate of transpiration can be increased by the following: increasing the temperature, decreasing the humidity, and increasing the air movement around the plant. All of these result in water evaporating from the leaves at a faster rate. Roots are where water and mineral ions enter the plant. The meristem are where new cells are made. Phloem, on the other hand, are the conveyor belts of cells that transport sugars, food, and sap up and down the plant. We call this translocation. That's bidirectional. A lack of nitrate ions means a plant can't synthesize proteins effectively, and that stunts growth. Chlorosis is the scientific term for the yellowing of leaves. This can be due to magnesium deficiency, as is needed to make chlorophyll. The cross-section of a leaf looks like this. Every layer has its own function. At the top we have the waterproof waxy cuticle. That's not there to stop water from entering the leaf, but to stop it from evaporating from the top and causing the leaf to dry out. The upper epidermis just means outer layer, consists of transparent cells that allow light to pass through to the palisade mesophyll layer. Mesophyll just means a layer in the middle. These are chock full of chloroplasts, so this is where the majority of photosynthesis takes place. Below that is the spongy mesophyll layer that has lots of gaps around the cells to increase the surface area across which gas exchange can occur. Carbon dioxide diffuses into the cells while oxygen and water diffuse out. We also have the vascular bundle that includes the xylem and phloem. The lower epidermis is the bottommost layer of the leaf, and it has holes in it called stomata, which is where gases enter and exit the leaf. The size of a stoma is controlled by the guard cells that flank the hole. They change size to control the rate at which gases enter and leave. For example, they close the stomata at night to reduce the rate of water loss, as less water is needed for photosynthesis. A food chain shows the direction that biomass, and therefore energy, flows in an ecosystem from one trophic level to another. Producers are any organisms that use sunlight to produce biomass, that's usually plants or algae. Primary consumers eat the producers, that's herbivores that only eat plants, or omnivores that eat both meat and plants. Then predators, known as secondary consumers, that could be carnivores or omnivores, prey on these, and then we can have tertiary consumers as well. Apex predators, they're at the top of the food chain. They have no natural predator above them. Population numbers of all of these will fluctuate in an ecosystem over time. By the way, this food chain is possible. I looked it up. Bears have been known to eat foxes. A pyramid of biomass is a way of viewing a food chain which shows us how much mass enters the next trophic level, relatively. You need to be able to draw one on graph paper using numbers supplied in the question, and also calculate the percentage absorbed by the next level. As per usual, any percentage is equal to the bit divided by the lot times 100. Of course, it's always a pyramid, and that shows us that biomass is lost at each level, as not all biomass is absorbed or consumed into the next organism. Some is lost due to the organisms living for some time before being eaten by a predator, for example. They have to move, they have to excrete. It's also lost as water, urea, and CO2. Nitrogen also follows a cycle. Nitrogen gas in the atmosphere, N2, is converted into nitrates by nitrogen-fixing bacteria found in soil or root nodules of some plants. Other bacteria and some fungi convert proteins into ammonia during decomposition of urine, feces, or dead organisms. This ammonia is converted into nitrates by nitrifying bacteria. Now that we have nitrates, they can enter plants through the roots and can be used by them for growth. Nitrates are turned back into nitrogen gas by denitrifying bacteria. Gosh, there's a bacterium for everything. Man-made fertilizers contain nitrates to help crops grow. Of course, if too much is used, water, say from rain, can cause it to run off into ponds and lakes where the water is still. This causes algae on the surface to bloom, making a barrier that stops light from reaching underwater plants. These then die, and respiring bacteria feeding on this dead plant material use up more oxygen in the water, starving fish and other creatures of it, and they die. This is eutrophication. So I hope you found that helpful. Leave a like and a comment if you did, and click on the card to take you to the playlist for all of the papers, and don't forget to check out the Quiz Shorts app to help you test your knowledge, and I'll see you next time.